Tonight, guys, I'm checking out an animated film from 2000. That movie is Robin and the Dreamweavers. Now, I don't know a lot about this movie, guys, partially because the first time I ever heard about it was during one of my live streams. What I do know is that it is, as I stated, animated. The movie has some kind of a anti-pornography message to it. I'm not sure how heavy-handed that message is going to be handed down. And I also know that the movie is made by legendary animation producer Lou Scheimer. Lou Scheimer, back in the 70s and 80s, was running a company called Filmation and made some of the most memorable shows most children of the late 70s and early 80s watched. Things such as Bravestarr, Fat Albert, He-Man, She-Ra, the list sort of goes on. This was made 10 years after he made all of those. So I'm kind of hoping that a lot of the faults and failings that were on all of those earlier works, such as the excessive use of recycled animation, the rather limited voice cast, I'm hoping that all of that has been fixed 10 years after Filmation went, under. I'm also hoping for this to at least be a halfway decent movie. I have no earthly clue. The only way I'm going to find out, though, is if I shut up and I push play, and I'm going to do that right now. So, without further ado, it's time to kick back, relax, and check out Robin and the Dreamweavers. You know, guys, our villain, Triple X, would probably look a lot more threatening if they actually did the shading on her face right. Unfortunately, the shade ends here, so it's obvious that she has no features on her face outside of a pair of glowing eyes and some lips. And it doesn't look threatening, it just looks kind of cheap and incredibly shit. So, our hero Robin's a singer. And this kind of sucks. I'm certainly hoping, guys, for the rest of the movie to be at least good, and it is at least kind of fascinating. But goddamn, this music is fucking terrible, man. So Triple X's power is literally derived from people going to porn sites. That is exactly what this movie just said. That's creative. Kind of stupid, but at least it's kind of creative. Also, as a side note, can we get at least one character in this film who's not painfully irritating? Just one. I'm not asking for much here. I want a character who's got some level of personality and isn't blitheringly annoying. It's just starting to grate slightly. Alright. I really do need to ask this. Why is it that every woman in this film with massive tits always feels the urge to start fondling themselves the moment that they notice they have big tits? It's really weird, guys, and it seems so awkward, weird, and kind of dumb. But Triple X is like the third character I've seen to fucking do that, and it's just, it makes no sense to me. Well, guys, that was Robin and the Dreamweavers. Let's shut that off. Jesus. God almighty. Okay, goddamn, I don't know where the fuck to even start. Alright, let's try to figure out a jumping off point and see if we can work it out from there. Writing. Let's start with the writing. This thing definitely does have a very strong anti-porno message to it, which, I guess if you're showing this to, like, teenagers, telling them about the evils of vice and all that shit, then, hey, then that's fine. However, I'm not sure if this thing was intended for teenagers. That right there is where it gets kind of odd. The reason why I say that is because there's a lot of shit in here that I don't think you would put in a program intended specifically for teenagers. That's more along the lines of, like, sex, nudity, and language. Nudity and sex really play in very late into the film. But, for something that might have been seen as some kind of, like, an educational film for, like let's say, high school students. Even then, guys, most of that crap is sanitary as hell in terms of language. The very fact that the moment that Triple X's men find Robin, the only thing which they ever refer to her as is the bitch. That kind of tells you, that this may not have been intended for kids, or at least may not have been intended for teenagers specifically. It may have been like a general piece, a general like propaganda film against porn. Why you would want to make it animated then, and then thus alienate most friggin' adults, I don't totally know, but that's still kind of sort of the thing. So let's just sort of look past exactly who the hell the target audience is, because I have no fucking clue. Let's just talk about the story itself. Our story is kind of flimsy, partially because this apparently was supposed to be the pilot for a TV show, which also begs the question, this sort of brings it back to, what audience was this supposed to be for? Because if it was a pilot for a TV show, and you have this kind of language, you have rampant nudity, you have visible oral friggin' sex going on in certain... Guys, I swear to God, at one point, as Triple X is giving her speech at the end, if you look in the background, you can see some guy getting friggin' head in the background. It was basically like the one thing I focused on because I wasn't expecting to see it. Again, not sure what audience this was meant for. If this thing was supposed to be like a television pilot, like a fucking like pilot movie, I don't know what channel would have picked up a show like this. But anyway, it is just trying to lay out like the base work. It's just basically laying out like the framework for what would have been a potential television show. So we don't have an ultra deep story. We basically are just introduced to all of our characters. Our conflict is kind of flimsy at best. And it doesn't totally work. One thing I cited earlier, and it was a little bit of an exaggeration on my part, is how irritating all of the characters are. I kind of have to whittle that down a touch. Because really, the problem when it comes to characters and how they're written and how they're so annoying is the Dreamweavers. All of them are incredibly irritating. Special mention goes to Randy, who for whatever reason seems to be like the leader of the Dream Weavers. Who, I want you to imagine Roger Rabbit if almost everything that came out of his mouth was some kind of like a double entendre, or was just full blown hitting on Robin. That is literally all of his fucking dialogue. So essentially Roger Rabbit, only horny and incredibly irritating. Even more irritating than Roger Rabbit could be. That's kind of sort of what they did there with that character. And he's probably the worst out of all of them, but every other one of the Dreamweavers are incredibly annoying. Robin's two friends in the real world who are running the digital club. One of them is incredibly annoying, and her fucking love interest has zero personality to speak of. Probably the only character with anything that even comes close to likability is Triple X, and that's because they wrote her as a fantastic villain. And if you want your story to work, you do have to have a rather interesting villain, and they did at least that much. Otherwise, guys, our characters range from either being flat and lifeless, or they're just so irritating you want them to fucking die. And you don't want that, especially when you're trying to pitch something as a potential television show. You want to try to make your characters a little bit more likable, perhaps maybe a little bit more realistic, and they didn't do that here. As for the story kind of feels like some kind of a bullshit head-on fucking pile-up of The Matrix and Cool World, and I guess I can mention Who Framed fucking Roger Rabbit, because once more, that kind of sort of seems like the primary, like, I guess we can call that the inspiration for the Dreamweavers. Is they're very reminiscent of kind of sort of the Doodles and Cool World and the Toons and Roger Rabbit if they kind of merged into some disgusting mass. But nothing here is really implemented well. It kind of sort of has this matrixy feel in the sense that you're able to jack into the virtual world. Kind of has the Cool World vibe where Robin's able to physically go into the world instead of just friggin' jacking in. And none of it really works. None of it, honestly, is properly explained. There's some kind of like a chamber that was built, which could possibly move people from the real world into the digital world. Triple X wants that, so that way she can come into our world, and so she basically seduces this possibly gay tech head to make his company build it. It's never fully explained if Nelson is gay or not. It is ridiculously implied though. And the story, it's just kind of flimsy. Which, okay, yes, you only had about an hour and 15 to tell your story, but still, you could have done a hell of a lot better. And once more, if you were trying to pitch this thing as a possible TV show, you should have done better than this. This was kind of boring when all was said and done. Part of that, I think, though, has to do with the acting. It really does, because the actors in most scenes, they do not sound like they care. Again, the only character who really, the only actor who really sounds like they care about what's being said and what's going on is the person playing Triple X. She honestly sounds like she knows what the fuck she's doing. She actually sounds like she cares about what's going on the page. The guy who's playing Nelson is just focused on trying to sound as much like Vincent fucking Price as possible, and nobody else fucking tried. That, honest to God, guys, is how I could sum up the entire cast. Is one person tried to actually make their fucking performance good. One person was trying too hard to sound like Vincent Price. Everybody else sucked. The acting in here is wooden, lifeless, and shit. Once more, when it isn't wooden and lifeless, it is just so irritating that you wish it just wasn't the fuck there. So, acting is horrendously bad. Oh boy, animation. I mentioned at the start of this that I was worried about some of Lou Scheimer's failings coming back into this. The stuff that was noticeable when he was running Filmation, and my god, a lot of that shit is back in spades. I'm talking, of course, about recycled animation. There is one shot you are going to grow very sick of because it's used so often, and that is every time we have an establishing shot of Nelson's company, it's called Biochip. You first have a shot of the Biochip building. It slowly pans in. Then it fades to this shot that kind of sort of looks like a fifth-rate version of the fucking bat friggin' cave. Slowly zooms in on that, and then we get into the shot proper. Almost every time we go back to the Biochip building, it's those two shots. I think they skipped the pseudo bat cave shot once. Otherwise, the other 8 times or so that they go to the Biochip building, same fucking thing. Jacking in has the very same animation sequence going in. The worst one has to be Randy's car. You see, because Randy in the digital world, this little stupid fucking rabbit, he has this car, and they only animated about 4 or 5 movements for it, and the thing is rendered in CG. So you will basically see this car swing through like this, and they will then have worked in the hand-drawn animated characters. And then they will cut to another shot where the car is where it's now facing behind the car, and the car is making a few more sweeps. And then we see that first swing over again, and they'll keep doing that again and again. The only thing that'll change is how or where the hand drawn characters are, and it just looks cheap. It does. Top it off, guys. The CG here. For something that came out in 2000, why the fuck does all the CG look like it came out of 1992? Okay? I that that really did kill a lot of this. Oh God, fuck me dead. Writing, going right back to writing. I've got to touch on something. There was a mountain there was a mountain of internet and PC references in here that didn't work. For every person who thinks that puns and wordplay suck, and they want to cite shit like Batman and fucking Robin, I want you to watch this. This is how you don't do it. All right? Especially the first time that we see the Dream fucking Weavers, and almost every other word is some kind of internet network or general fucking computing term that doesn't work. It doesn't fit. It sounds so shoehorned in and forced. And that one scene, it is the absolute worst, and it still trickles in across every other bit of dialogue in this film. But it's nowhere near as bad as that first time, and oh my God, you are going to cringe. You are going to cringe hard, because it sucks. And they keep working it in. They keep on trying to shoehorn in all of this, I guess in some sort of way to, I guess, kind of sort of remind the viewer that this is, in fact, a digital world in cyber fucking space. So go ahead, honestly, and talk about zip drives and purging and shit, because that's the only way you're going to be able to remind people that they are in a digital realm. Even though by 2000, the Matrix was a fucking thing, and the Matrix showed us that you didn't have to do that kind of stupid shit. You just have to trust that the viewer knows that they're in fucking, that they are in fucking cyberspace, that they are within the system. Oh my God! Well, that though is like there's like one of the big issues I had in terms of writing, and just wanted to get that out there. I was talking about animation before I segued back over there. Animation here, when it's not the same old rehashed, recycled bullshit, and when it's not horrendous CG vehicles or buildings, what is here oftentimes looks pretty friggin' decent. I honestly will say that as characters friggin' move, the movement is kind of sort of natural. Mouth movements are for the most part decent. Nothing here honestly is going to blow you the fuck away in terms of animation, but what is here is at least halfway decent. Sound mix. The sound mix here is for the most part decent. I will say that at times, like, crowd shots will become a little bit of a pain. Oftentimes you'll hear shit in the background. You'll hear little digital like pings in the background again, which is put in to kind of sort of remind you that you are in cyberspace, and that you're in the digital world. And some of those pings will have a habit. Some of those pings and blips and modem noises will have a bad habit of sometimes drowning out the dialogue. So they might have wanted to have dropped the fucking volume on all of that digital bullshit in the background a smidge. But hey, that honestly happened maybe twice across the entire film when it actually drowns out dialogue and you can't hear it. So that honestly is not a huge deal, but it is worth mentioning. God, what else is there to really mention? Music. I mentioned that Robin apparently is a singer. She has one song. That song was shit. The only other music that is really noticeable is at the cyber club that Robin is a DJ at, and it's just painfully boring. It's painfully boring, generic techno shit. I'm not real big into techno, so it's not my thing. Ultimately, guys, am I able to recommend Robin and the Dreamweavers? Probably not, no. The movie isn't terrible, mind you. The movie is not in any way horrible, but it also is not interesting enough to warrant somebody going out and finding it. And even though, guys, you can find the whole thing on YouTube, in fact, shit, I watched it off of YouTube, I still would not recommend it. It isn't worth your time. It's not worth your effort. It ultimately, guys, is a waste of an hour. It's basically a waste of an hour and 15. I'm kind of happy that this wasn't picked up as a full-blown series, because I can only dread to think what kind of crap would have churned up if this thing were turned into a regular series. The movie the movie, once more, it's not fucking terrible, but there's no way in hell I'm going to tell you guys that you need to go out and seek it. It's just not worth it. It's just, it honest to God, is just not a fun movie to watch. It might be fun if you happen to have like a group of people and you just want to fucking like, you want to fucking like riff on it, then by all means. You will have a mountain of perfect riffing material here. However, if you're just trying to find something interesting to watch, give it a pass. This movie is not worth it, and I'm kind of sorry I wasted the hour and 15 watching it. But the plus side is now that I've watched it, I never have to watch this stupid thing again, and I see that as probably the biggest positive of all. Now, God, that was terrible. I kind of feel like going back and trying to find some of fucking like Lou Scheimer's other, works, because I know that back in the 80s and back in the late 70s, Scheimer and his company Filmation made some awesome stuff. I'm going to go see if there's any episodes of Bravestarr on YouTube, because Bravestarr was actually a rather interesting show. So yeah, I'm going to go hunt for some of those. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of Reaction and Review. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and I will see you all in the near future. Peace.